Okay, so we are going to talk tonight about the rise of Muhammad. And a lot of times when we think about history and we think about religion, and you hear stuff about the Muslims and you think, well, that has happened so long, so far back in history. But when you consider that it is relatively young in comparison to what you see happening with the church, because the church is prophesied, of course, from the very beginning with Abraham. And so what you're going to see is some interesting things, because really, if you want to think about, we've been talking about the Catholic Church is established before Muhammad even is born. And so we're going to talk about some of that tonight. So let's get started with Muhammad himself. And you'll hear some different things, and I can't remember which one it is. There's you'll hear it called Mohammedanism, and then you'll hear it, them being called Muslims, and you'll hear different variations of those things, different even spellings of some of that stuff. There's different spellings of even the Quran, and people will, there's like some sort of an offensive term, and I can't remember which one it is, for Muslims. I can't even remember. I think it might even be Muslim. I don't know. But there is an offensive term here, and I can't remember which one it is. And I'm just going to be unapologetic because I just really don't care, And so, when it comes to this is a completely false religion. You see it right from the very beginning, and it's just a crazy endeavor altogether. So let's talk about Muhammad. He is, of course, the founder of Islam. He was born in April of 570 AD. Some say that when he was born, that he opened his mouth and said, "God is great. There is no God but God, and I am his prophet," which is, of course, a famous line that I'm not even going to try to pronounce it in its original tongue, but many times it's used in movies. You'll hear the phrase used over and over again. I've watched movies where there were prominent Muslim figures in the movies, and they would say this phrase. They just repeat this in their native tongue. God is great, there's no God but God. And of course then Muhammad is his prophet. Some have stories that he was born with a symbol in between his shoulder blades, proclaiming that he is a prophet. And so, that's another one of those. All of these, of course, are just complete, farces. They don't exist. These are just stories that they've come up with. Now, he has a tragic background, which I believe is just a psychological reason as to why he does what he does. And his tragic background is that his father dies, and he's just with his mother. His mother dies, and then he's given over to his grandfather, and 2 years later, his grandfather dies. And then he's given over to his uncle, and he just stays with his uncle for quite a while. So his uncle was a merchant, and his uncle took a lot of interest in him, and he took him on his travels and taught Muhammad the trade of being a merchant. And so, when you see some of these things, maybe you took a kid to see Aladdin when that was, the cartoon version. I don't know about this other one, but think about Disney's Aladdin, and you have that caravan coming into town to sell goods. That's exactly what is going on here. They're selling their goods, and so his uncle, being a merchant, would have done that thing. So Muhammad learned the trade, and it was said that while he traveled as a merchant in the burning sands, an angel hovered over him to protect him from the sun. And it protected him from the heat, and then sent a cloud over him to protect him further. Of course, that's a nice thought, right? but how many times have you been out and it's been hot? I know I've been thinking, while I've been at like Bible camp, I'm thinking, man, it'd be nice if it was just a cloud would come over us and shade us for a little bit. You got to imagine that if you're walking along and a cloud comes over you and you're going about the same pace, that's pretty nice. But just the fact that, oh, God has sent this to me to protect me from the heat, that's, I'm sorry. That's just one of those ridiculous things. But at the age of 25, he became the chief merchant and camel driver for a rich widow named Khadijah. She offered Muhammad double wages to guide her caravan. And Muhammad, of course, at this time is described as being very handsome, just a really handsome guy. Now, you see drawings of things, and you've got to remember that people during different times look at handsome in different ways. And just to give an illustration, I was looking at a picture the other day of a nobleman that was, I can't remember if he was a king, but he's called Philip the Handsome. And there you go, Philip the Handsome. I tell you what, looking at pictures of him, you go, that's what passed for handsome back then? I'd be doing all right, like you're thinking, this is okay. But yeah, no, just at different times, there's even, I heard that when people came over to America, that the thought of a woman, if you had a skinny woman, skinny woman today would be like, oh, that's great. You want a skinny woman. At that time, that was actually not the thing. You wanted let's say a robust woman, and that's what they wanted. So things change over time. So, speaking historically, you see some paintings and stuff, and you might go, that was, considered handsome. Okay, that's kind of weird. It's just, time and place. That's what they did. But Khadijah was that rich widow. She then fell in love with Muhammad, and actually on his way back home from one of these trips, she actually sent out a servant. I'm going to butcher this, Masara, and she sent her out and actually proposed to Muhammad for the widow. And so she does that. Muhammad accepts her offer for marriage. And of course, she's rich, so that's nice. And he's able to maybe kind of cut back a little bit. But Muhammad then spent much of his time in meditation. He meditated in a cave near Mecca and claimed to have visions from God. And it's in this cave that Muhammad claimed to see the angel Gabriel. And at the age of, and during this time, he starts talking about the Quran, but the Quran as we know it today was not like actually made, and we'll get to that later. But Quran means the thing read, and he starts talking and speaking of the Quran at this point in time. But at the age of 38, so hey, there we go, I'm 38 today. At the age of 38, he went to a cave and stayed for 2 years. I'm not going to do that. At the age of 40, he gave himself the title of Apostle of God. And he then converts his wife, he converts a freed slave, and he converts his nephew, Ali. 4 years after Muhammad started telling people of the things he had experienced in the cave, he starts, teaching this to people. It's not very well received. He starts speaking of the Quran, and during the first year of his public efforts, he only wins 8 people to as converts. He only converts 8 people. Then what happens?
what do they do? Or what are they?
Yeah, so as far as like, I don't really know exactly what he was teaching at this point. And it seems like he and we're going to talk about this in just a minute, but it seems like he probably starts learning people a little bit better, and he starts learning how to speak because he starts preaching, and his preaching starts converting people. We'll get to a little bit more of what he was teaching really closer to the end. At this point in time, I don't know exactly what he was teaching. Probably, if we went in and we studied the Quran itself, we could see some of that. And not to jump ahead too far, you know what? Yeah, we'll just come back to it because some of that will be explained a little bit. There were so many. So he's teaching something new, and there are so many that were in opposition to his new teaching that he and 80 men and 7 women fled to Medina. So of course his numbers are growing, and so they flee to Medina. This was known as the Hajj. This flight took place on July 16th, 622 AD. And in July 16th, 622, and July 16th in particular, became the beginning date for the Muslim calendar. This is a big event in Muslim history. So for the Muslims, July 16th is, the beginning of their calendar. At Medina, so going back a little bit to this, by his excellency of speech, he is said to have converted the entire city. Now, I'm going to question that just a little bit in just a moment because of some of his tactics here about how converted people are when you hear this. The Jews, of course, did not follow him. He made a 6-step program, and this is before Alcoholics Anonymous making their 7 steps or whatever they have, 12 steps. Oh, how was it? I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But yeah, he made a 6-step program. So he basically, when you're thinking of this sounds almost like the 10 Commandments, except it's just 6, and you'll hear some a little bit of similarities here. So his 6-part program does this. He says, we will not worship any but the one God. We will not steal. We will not commit adultery. We will not kill our children. We will not slander. We will not disobey the prophet in anything that is right. And of course, who's the prophet? That's Muhammad. So at this point, he brought a lot of people over, by this eloquent preaching. And here's the kicker. This is why I'm going, okay, well, who's really converted? Because anyone who had not become Muslims, what do you think happened to them?
Killed.
They were killed. Yeah. So, if you're wishy-washy on your religion at that point anyway, and someone says, hey, become a Muslim. No, I don't think I will. Oh, if you don't, we'll kill you. I think I'm going to become a Muslim. That's pretty easy thought process if you don't have a solid background in the church at this point. Anyone who wouldn't become Muslims were killed. He taught that anyone who died fighting would have a place in paradise. Of course, how do you think a person's gonna fight if they think that when they are killed in battle, that's a ticket into paradise? Yeah, you're going to go in there and you're going to fight without any fear. It doesn't matter, because if you fight hard and you kill a lot of people, you win. If you fight hard and you're killed, you win. So it's really an interesting thought process. So in 630 AD, now this is where some things get a little interesting. 630 AD, they went out against Mecca. Now at this point, they are able to take 1,000 men, and they're going to go and they're going to take Mecca by surprise. And as they're coming up on the city, they find one of the leading men of the city, and they capture him. And this man pleads with them and says, please don't attack the city. And, we don't want, bloodshed. So does anybody want to guess what Muhammad ends up telling this guy? You know what? If the city will convert to being Muslims, follow me, then they won't be killed. We'll spare their lives. So, very little bloodshed happened in Mecca because, what do? They just convert. Now, I want to stop right here, and I'm going to bring something up because this is a lie I have been told by people. I've been told this by Muslims, actually, and I correct them on it. And I'm like, man, you got to know your own book if you're going to say this. But people will say that, this Islam is a religion of peace. Have you heard that? CNN likes to say that one. And I'll tell you what, it's not a religion of peace. I've compared it like this. What's that?
It is if you do it wrong.
Right. That's exactly what I've said. I compare it to the church and denominations to brethren. I'll say, what you have is the Muslims that kill are people that are getting it fundamentally right. And the ones that don't are pretty much just liberal, and that ends up being like the denominations. So you have the church that's trying to stick to the scriptures, and then you have all these denominations that they kind of hold to some of it, but they don't hold to it by and large. And when you look at Islam, it's kind of the same. The people that are killing are the ones that are really holding to it. And the ones that aren't are the ones that, oh no, it's a peaceful religion, So that's the thing. Now, going back in history and looking at exactly what he has done, does it sound peaceful? No, not at all. So it drives me crazy when people are like, oh no, it's a peaceful religion. And I had somebody that was, there was a guy, he's very liberal, and he caused me a lot of problems at the congregation. And he came up to me. I had preached on something, and I had said something about the Islamic religion, and he came up and he said, well, I know that there are some really good Muslims. Well, I don't doubt that there are, but I can tell you this: they're doing it wrong. Because if they're doing it right, they'd kill you. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. You can't go. And I used to be a little bit more versed in this. I took a class specifically on this in college, looking at the different religions of the world. And I took this class, and they showed how this just does not compare to what you're seeing in the public, what people are saying about it. And so, yeah, it is violent in its essence. I mean, that's exactly how it got started. Hey, convert or die. That's it. It's interesting though how people I think it's because they just don't know what they're talking about. It's like that guy I was talking to. He had no clue what he was talking about. And he's trying to tell me, oh no, it's a religion of peace. And I'm like, I'm sure it is. For people who aren't doing it right, I'm sure that's just fine. But
death to America.
Right. I mean, yeah.
That's nothing peaceful about that.
Yeah. Well, see, what they do is they compartmentalize that. They'll go, oh, but those are the radicals. That's what they call. They're the radicals. Well, they're radically Islam, and that's what they're doing. They're doing it. They're pretty much doing it right, is what it is. And so there's a lot of little things here that obviously they're just terrible. And I wonder how people that are in Islam kind of weigh this out, because what I've learned over time is that, here it is. It's saying, don't slander. So you're not talking bad about somebody, and people kind of relate that to, oh, well, don't lie. That's not the same thing. And they'll kind of put that in the same category. See, slander is lying about somebody and talking bad about somebody, while lying in and of itself is really not condemned in Islam. Matter of fact, if you're trying to convert somebody, you can lie to them all day long just to try to convert them. So it's really, really kind of a weird dichotomy here between morals and what is taught. And we're going to get a little bit more into this. And you know what? If you want to ask me some more questions about this, I'll answer them in private. But there's some things in this religion, especially concerning women, that is just so disgusting, and it is awful. But anyway, we'll get to some of that. If you have more questions, we'll talk in private. I don't think that's a public thing that we need to just talk about. But so they go and they take over Mecca. Muhammad destroys the images in Kaaba, proclaimed the ground between Mecca and Medina holy, and upon becoming the conquering ruler, Muhammad persecuted the Jews and reduced the Christians to dependency. He does this all. Remember, he kind of starts this when he's 38, and then at the time that he conquers, Mecca, he takes it over. He's now 60 years old. So just giving some insight there. Now, here is where it gets a little funny. I don't know how to describe this really. It really sounds like he's about to have a dream, and this dream is just maybe we could call it psychedelic. I don't know if it's induced by drugs, but it is pretty out there. But he comes up with this whole system on this, and I'm by the way, I'm not insinuating that he has done drugs to get this. I'm just saying this is a really strange thing. I mean, dreams are strange anyway, so don't get me wrong there. But this seems a little additionally strange. And so let's go over it together. Gabriel visits him at night and woke him up. Gabriel said that he was taking him to God. So he's going to go get to visit God. And I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but Albora, his horse, was his ride. The horse began to buck, but Gabriel then, he calms him down. They sailed through the air to Jerusalem. Okay, so he's flying on this horse to Jerusalem, and normal dream stuff already. So that's okay. I'm just surprised it's not a leopard seal or something at this point. But they sailed through the air to Jerusalem, and they stopped, and they went to heaven. They tied the horse to a stone and climbed the stairs to the gate where they found Adam. Adam then embraces Muhammad, and he saw the stars hanging from the roof on golden chains. So all the stars are, he sees how they're hung. They're hung by golden chains. The first heaven was made of pure silver. So, I mean, you think about this, and just from like a scientific point of view, at that point in time, how would you have thought that the stars were just there? I mean, all this is just theory at this point. I mean, how is that done? And then Muhammad's like, well, what? They're hung by golden chains. All right.
But even then, Jerusalem was a holy city to them. Is that where they went to for this dream or whatever?
Yeah. Yes and no. So what you're going to see is kind of a melding together of what you see from the Jewish, standpoint. Like, here's things that we know about in the Bible. He's kind of meshing the Bible with his own stuff now. And that's why, sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, we serve the same God. And to that I say, oh, no, we don't. We don't. They have made a false God out of our God. And that's what you're starting to see here. So I don't know. Did I answer that all right? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, this is up in the, what time? The 5th century?
Yeah, so 6th. Yeah.
So that's 500 or 600 years after the fall of Jerusalem.
Right.
So I just wondered why they thought it was still a holy city.
Well, even today, what happens now? It's the Holy Lands. You go over to Jerusalem and people go, oh, you're going to go to the Holy Lands. Well, there's nothing holy about it. That's why you see brethren, when they go on trips to it, they call it what? The Bible lands. Because that's where the Bible is. There's nothing holy about the city. And so, yeah. So moving on here. Sees the stars hanging from the roof on golden chains. The first heaven was made of pure silver. Then they go to the second heaven. And at the rate of travel on earth, this is what he says. At the rate of travel on earth, it is said that it would have taken 500 years for this journey. But they were there in an instant. So, miraculous, right? Which, I don't deny the miraculous, just not outside really of the 2nd century at the most. So they will go to the second heaven. It was made of pure gold. There they met Noah. Who wouldn't want to meet Noah? That's pretty good. That's Noah. So second heaven, there's Noah. The third heaven was made of precious stones, and there was Abraham. That's where Abraham lived. Abraham was described as being very large. The distance between his eyes was 70,000 days journey. So when I'm thinking, looking at something, just don't know how I could determine a 70,000 days journey. Maybe this is a flat Earth, I guess. I don't know, but so his height was, here you go. So 70,000 days between the eyes, right? His height was 5 million days journey. Now, when you think about this, this description is a thing that if you're standing in front of Abraham, how can you determine that it's Abraham? This is weird stuff. Okay. So then moving on, Joseph dwelt in the 4th heaven that was made of emerald. The 5th heaven is where Moses lived. The 6th is where John the Baptist lived. The 7th, he said he found Jesus and an angel with 70,000 heads. And each of the angels' heads were 70,000 tongues and spoke 70,000 distinct voices at once. Does it sound anything like they're trying to copy the book of Revelation and Daniel, just apocalyptic literature? That's exactly. It's just and I've found this to be so true when it comes to any religious cult that tries to bring back to the Bible, and they go, this is what, this is how we get this, and even, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but the Mormons in the Book of Mormon, they plagiarize, just completely plagiarize the King James Version of the Bible. And they act like, oh, this is new, Be like, oh, no, this is this is the King James Version in some areas. Of course, they've added a whole bunch of other stuff, and actually we'll get to some of that later on, because there's actually ties from the Restoration movement to the Mormon Church, and you'll find that very interesting when we get there. Not that we started the Mormon Church or anything, but Joseph Smith was doing his thing at the same time that you see Alexander Campbell, and there's actually a whole lot of stuff. We'll have to wait to get there. But anyway, just interesting things here. The people try to take from the Bible to make their own religion, and they just kind of copy some stuff. And that's what I'm seeing right here, is that they're trying to copy that apocalyptic literature, that sound to it. So Muhammad then comes within 2 bow shots of the throne of God, which if anybody wants to know what that would have been at the time, it would have been, depending on what they were using, between 100 and 200 yards. So he's within 100 or 200 yards of the throne of God. God had his face covered with 70,000 veils. He likes 70,000 a lot. So 70,000 veils. Here he received things that were not lawful to utter, and he was told that, okay, pause for a second. You're going to want this said about you, okay? But he was told that he was the greatest man on the earth. I mean, that right there, God says you're the greatest person on earth. That's great.
That's all I need to know.
That's all you need to know. Yeah. Hearing that, I go, you just tried to tell people to convert or we'll kill you, but you're the greatest man on earth. We could talk about his interest in young women and go, you're the greatest person on earth. I don't think so.
Well, it was his dream.
It's true. It was. It was his dream, yeah. And when you have your own dream, you can do whatever you want to in your own dream, and God can tell you whatever he wants to in your own dream, I guess. But the next morning, he relates this to his followers, affirming that it was not just a vision, but that it was real. So, going back and thinking about all these details that he's given, stars are hung by golden chains. That's real? Well, we've proven that to be false. I guess unless you're a flat earther again, But we've proven that to be false. So what does that say about what Muhammad is teaching, just that alone? That's just false. All right, moving on. So, and of course, actually, his followers accepted it at the time and believe it until this day. So that's still the thing. Now, talking about the Quran, we mentioned before it means the thing read, and this is I had forgotten this, so when I read this, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about all that, and that just makes so much more sense, and I hope this kind of sticks in your mind. But the Quran is actually, when you think about the Bible is written by, different people at different times, guided by the Holy Spirit. When you think about the Quran, it's literally only the speeches, statements, and prayers of Muhammad, and any of that they had written down. They then, some were dictated, and some were written from memory, and then they were all compiled after his death to make the book, the Quran. And the longest in length were placed first. And so it's just, just a kind of a mess of, speeches and prayers and things like that. Now, in the Quran, recognizes these men as prophets. Now, this one, ought to make your blood boil just a little bit, okay? So, here are men recognized as prophets in the Quran. You have Adam and Abraham, you have Moses, you have John the Baptist, you have Christ, and then you have Muhammad, and Muhammad is the greatest of them all. Right, yeah. So that, yeah, of course, right, yeah.
Said so.
Right. And when you look into religious cults, and it doesn't matter, I haven't found a single one that doesn't do this. And if you do, let me know so I can go, except for the exception of this one. But men that start religious cults do 3 things. They find power, they find money, and they find women. And I can't think of a one, I've not studied a one, that hasn't done that. Joseph Smith did it, Muhammad did it, you can, Jim Jones, you can look at anybody, that's what they do. I was actually over this past week, I was reading up on Rasputin. I don't know if anybody's ever looked into Rasputin. And he's not just a comical bad guy from Anastasia animated series, movie. He was a bad guy. What did he do? Oh, he basically perverted religion to do what? To get power, to get money, and to get women. I mean, it's just, if you find one, let me know. That's exactly what he does. That's exactly what Muhammad does. In this, there are 5 obligations for each Muslim. First is to recite the creed. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. And so actually, I kind of messed it up. There's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the prophet of God. But you're to pray 5 times a day facing Mecca. You are to partake of no food from sun up till sundown during the month of Ramadan. Which is that? Is that now? I think that's now.
I think it's September.
Is it September? I don't know. Anyway, somebody look that up. I don't know. Yeah, somebody Google that. You're to give alms to the poor and make a pilgrimage to Mecca. Now, I love this one. So you give alms to the poor, make a pilgrimage to Mecca, if at all possible during one's lifetime.
April 2nd to May 2nd.
April 2nd to May 2nd. It's close. We'll split the difference, right? We'll split it. We're both right.
No, something's going on in September.
Yeah.
But not wrong.
Yeah, no. There is a big, that's the whole thing for September 11th is a big historical day where they lost the battle. And so, flip the tide on that one for America. But Friday is the day for public worship. They are not allowed to gamble or drink wine. Kindness was to be shown for slaves. Here you go. Wives are treated as property. Husbands were allowed only 4 at a time, but there was no objection to making changes. Now, I have heard this, and I can't remember if I read this in studying this or I just heard this from a lecture or something. But I have heard that they were the ones that started the rule of thumb. Have you ever heard this? The rule of thumb. You know where the rule of thumb came from? Rule of thumb is that you could beat your wife with a stick that was no bigger than your thumb. So that's the rule of thumb. So when you say, well, that's the rule of thumb, now you know where that came from. I think, I may not be able to quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that this is where that came from. Reasons why Arabs accepted Mohammedanism are this. It offered an outlet for their energy, just pent-up aggression and things like that. There's some excitement when it comes to conquest. There's a desire for plunder that appealed to desert dwellers. I mean, you go out. This is kind of like a Viking mentality. You're in a place that doesn't have a whole lot of resources. Go and take somebody else's resources. And so that's the idea there. The religion became more economic and political than actually religious, which we see today. The heathen were allowed to live as long as they paid their taxes. So there you go. That's good. So you don't convert, but you pay your taxes. You're just fine. Within 25 years from Hijrah, the followers of Muhammad had taken control of Egypt, Palestine, Persia, and Syria. And in another 150 years, you can add to that North Africa and Spain. And I didn't realize some of that, but I know that I knew a missionary that went over to North Africa and was there at the time that the Muslims in the area attacked some Christians, and he had taken a picture of the aftermath, and he and it was really sad because I had a four-wheeler there, and on the back of a four-wheeler was a carpet that was rolled up, and it was stained with blood, and it was one of the brethren. One of the brethren had been killed by a Muslim, and so I was like, wow, they're in North Africa? I didn't realize there's a prominent group of them there. It's just interesting stuff. But that's it for right now on this. We can come back to some of this a little bit later. And I find all this stuff kind of interesting because when we think about what we're told from the media, it's just not true. I mean, even well-meaning people have gotten this one wrong. I've heard a lot of people talk about, oh, no, it's a religion of peace, and those people that are fundamentalists, they're just getting it wrong, and well, that's reversed. They're getting it right, and that's why it's so dangerous. Matter of fact, if you actually maybe at some point in time I can give a lesson on this, it was considered part of the writing of the original documents of the United States was to help keep the Muslims out because of the radical nature of them. And so there's a lot of interesting things there. But
30 or 40 years ago, Daddy was saying to watch out for the Muslims.
Right.
That
Yeah.
they were probably the worst thing that could happen to America.
Right. Yeah. And you see it. I mean, there are places where, what is that? Is it Dearborn, Michigan? I think it's Dearborn. Is that right? Does that sound right? Dearborn, Michigan? Okay, so then that is right. So there is a prominent Muslim presence in Dearborn, Michigan, and in some places they have. I don't know if this has actually ever gone through completely, but in some places they have allowed for Muslim law to be practiced within certain places in America, which domestic violence is a part of that, and it's okay. But of course, domestic violence isn't okay in America yet. If you're a Muslim, then that's acceptable because women are just property, and so that's again, that's a terrible thing. But anybody have any other comments before we close out today? All right. Well, Brother Kevin, you mind leading us in prayer?
Father in heaven, we're thankful for this day and thankful for this opportunity we have to come to study. We're thankful for the efforts that Matt puts forth to guide us through this, for the history that we're learning. We pray, Father, we can use it to better our knowledge and be better able to serve you. We thank you for the beautiful day that we've enjoyed. We appreciate all the things that you do for us. Watch over us as we depart. Forgive us where we fall short. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Today's Matt's birthday, as most everybody knows. We have a cake for him over here, so stick around. Let's have a piece of cake.